Vespers, 4 strides to each length of the room. Harm sits, nerves showing in restless fingers. Wall becomes door, and a young man appears, teeth and shirt white, crisp. She's ready for you now. Harm jumps up, but the vagrant is already through the door. They follow the nurse into another room. Machinery folds away as they approach, shy, giving hints to what may have happened. On a black chair, Vesper dozes, straps receding from her ankles and wrists. The vagrant rushes to her side, hands moving to the space where hair used to be, wanting to touch, unsure. "The implantation procedure was a complete success," says the nurse. "The incision has been covered with skein, and there should be no scarring, even under the hairline." "Thank you," says Harm. "The drugs will be wearing off shortly. There may be some mild disorientation, but nothing to worry about. I'll be back to check on you all in 30 minutes. If you need me, just touch the wall here to open a channel." The nurse leaves, and the 2 men study Vesper, attending to every toe twitch, eyelid flutter, and sigh. Eventually, Vesper yawns, wide and epic. She rubs her eyes and looks around vacantly. Harm and the vagrant smile hopefully at her. Seconds pass, tense, and then Vesper's eyes focus. She sees the 2 men and grins broadly. In unison, they sigh. Vesper giggles. "Well, she seems normal." The vagrant leans over Vesper, checking each part of her methodically. "They only worked on her head, you know." Harm's comment does nothing to stop the examination. Surprise takes Vesper's face, then even that fades, muscles slacking off as attention goes inward. Harm and the vagrant exchange a worried look. "I'm going to call the nurse," says Harm, rushing to the wall panel. Vesper begins to frown. Her lips twitch. The vagrant strokes her cheek. "Dada?" Surprise finds the vagrant. Moist eyes follow. Then, after a long pause, a nod. "Dada!" "Was that Vesper? Did she just—" In an instant, Harm is back by the chair. The vagrant nods again, as if to himself. Vesper attends to Harm. Once more, her face goes blank. Far away. Behind them, walls shift, allowing the nurse's return. "Is everything all right in here?" "Yes, I think so. Vesper just said her first word. Is that normal?" The nurse's voice is calm, soothing. "Perfectly. It means she's interacting with the implant." "And now, should she look like that?" "Yes. It just means she's listening to the implant. As time goes on and she acclimatizes, the communication will get faster." "What word did she say?" Harm glances at the vagrant. "Dada." "That makes sense. When Vesper saw her father, the implant supplied the correct label, repeating for reinforcement. It's an excellent sign that she was able to convert the stimulus into speech so quickly. As her speech develops, the implant will use more complex sound clusters, so Dada will become Daddy, or be replaced by Father." "So this is normal?" "Very much so." The nurse withdraws, and the room seals itself off from the rest of the building. Once more, Vesper becomes the centre of attention. "Can you say harm?" Vesper concentrates. "Mom?" "Nearly. Harm. Her arm. Can you say that?" Her arm?
Mama.
The vagrant staggers, shoulders shaking, the laughter silent, uncontrollable. He grabs the wall for support. No, not Mama. Harm.
Dada?
Harm points to the breathless vagrant. That's Dada. He points to himself. Harm. Or Uncle. Can you say Uncle? Uncle?
Umble.
That's good. I'm Uncle Harm. Can you say it? Uncle Harm?
Umble arm.
That's it. Vesper grins.
Umble arm.
Yes! She aims a pudgy finger at the vagrant.
Dada.
Yes!
Umble arm. Dada. Umble arm. Dada.
Yes! The green-eyed man leans in closer. And you're Vesper. Can you say that? Vesper. Vesper. Vesper.
Esper.
That's brilliant!
Esper. 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 Esper.
The vagrant picks Vesper up, swinging her into an embrace.
Dada.
Says Vesper softly. Near the rear of First Circle sits an office, nondescript. There is no queue. Visitors come by appointment only. The office contains a desk that slopes downward, making whoever sits behind it seem smaller, more humble. No wealth is displayed. No decorations, no symbols. All is monochrome. Roger admits the first appointment. It is a man, fresh marks on his face, bands of white around one wrist. Thank you for letting me come. Please, sit down. Tell me what you need. The man's face is desperate. Tabs for my little girl, just a couple. Without them, she won't be able to digest her food. I see, says Roger, pursing his lips. Just a couple? That's all I need. For one dose, perhaps. That will last, what, a month? I'd assume you want your little girl to eat for the whole journey. The man hangs his head. We can't afford. Not with the way things are. Let me be the judge of that. Show me what you have. The man touches the desk, and a window lights up on its surface. Numbers appear, tracking upward. They are studied in silence. Afterwards, Roger touches the window, making it dark. I have good news for you, Second Circleman Ilion. I'm confident we can find a supply for your child at a price you can afford. Surprise mixes with relief, then delight on the man's face. Thank you. Thank you so much. I didn't think we had enough saved up. That's true. There's not nearly enough money in your account. Delight falters, fades. I don't understand. I'm talking about other assets, organs, blood. The chip in your brain is increasing in value. But that would take me off grid. If you don't want to give it up, you could sell us shares. A few hours a night, perhaps, paying off your debt over the next 10 or 15 years. The man stares at his swollen knuckles. I don't know. It's up to you, of course. I suppose it depends what you think is more important. A deal is made. More people come. Whatever they ask for, Roger delivers. There is sometimes a delay, always a price, but every supplicant is given the chance for what they want. When they have left, Roger writes each request down. Archaic means for strange times. The list is folded, taken by hand, delivered elsewhere. The next day the goods arrive in unmarked crates, brought quietly from the docks into First Circle. With them is a note. Roger reads it, nods. Another request. This one non-negotiable. As always, he meets it. First Circle's park is a battleground. Blows are struck and young voices cry out. Bodies fall to rise again, sometimes infernal, sometimes not. Sides change too quickly for the players to keep track, but few care. Parents mill about the edges, their thoughts on other realities, speculating, worrying. One mother changes her baby with practiced ease, prompting a green-eyed man to spontaneous applause. In an overlooked corner, the vagrant sits, taking notes. A child approaches Vesper with exaggerated steps, wiggling fingers fanned out and held above her head. Vesper's mouth drops open, and the girl touches her shoulder.
Tag, you're a monster!
Vesper looks to the vagrant for help, then back to the girl, but she is already after her next victim. Gradually, the monsters grow to outnumber the human children, until only one remains. She is given an imaginary lance and sets about chasing the monsters, dropping them with a touch. Harm approaches a parent, narrowly avoiding the mini-monsters stampeding around him.
Is it right to let them play like this?
The interruption irritates. What's your problem?
It's a brutal game. It teaches them that all half-breeds are evil.
Of course it does. That's the truth.
No, it isn't. What if your child got infected? Would it make them evil?
The man bristles. My girl's pure, but yes, if she were infected it would be a matter of time. I've got friends who took themselves to Third Circle to contain the taint, so I know what I'm talking about. That's why we teach our kids to run from the monsters, because we know. Indignation becomes anger, and the man's face pushes forward, aggressive. Who are you to talk about my girl, anyway? Well? Harm's argument is stolen away, lost amid rising emotions. He looks down, defeated. I thought so. She's pure, all right. You ever suggest otherwise again, and you'll regret it.
I wasn't suggesting...
You keep an eye on yours if you know what's good for you. The man points an accusing finger at Vesper. She looks like she's on the turn to me. Swiftly, Harm retreats to the vagrant's corner.
I think it's time to go for a walk.
The vagrant shrugs, complies. Vesper leads the way with utter certainty, weaving through crowds. Every few moments, speaking signs declare the need for calm. At each corner, guards stand, vigilant. When night falls, people pack below decks to sleep, but in the day they seek light and air. Space is a premium. Elbows fight for breathing room. On benches, thighs press together. Rations are eaten slowly, savoured. An empty street runs between two buildings, converted barracks for First Circle's military. Vesper runs towards it, spreading her arms. Beyond, cranes of brass loom, rising high over the rooftops, cables swaying gently. A woman steps into her path, uniformed and friendly.
Whoa there, little one.
Vesper darts to the guard's right, but she is too quick, intercepting her. She tries going left, but again the guard is there. She pauses, thinks. A smile threatens.
Excuse me,
says Harm as he and the vagrant catch up.
what's down there?
Mainly storage, she says, stepping quickly to foil another attempt to pass.
And where they put most of the lower 4th and 5th circle duds. Nothing you'd be interested in. Why is it so quiet?
It's quiet here because of us. Don't be fooled, though. Further in is a different story. The vagrant frowns, takes Vesper's hand, and steps forward.
I wouldn't go in there if I were you.
Harm takes Vesper's other hand.
Are you stopping us from going in?
No. I'm stopping them from coming out. I'm just offering you some friendly advice. Still frowning, the vagrant nods to her. She stands aside, and Vesper bounds eagerly forward, pulling the two men after. 3 years ago. The village treats the squires like heroes. They soon become accustomed to their new status. Days become weeks. Both try to win Reela's heart. They sing her songs, bring her gifts, escort her like royalty. But Reela's heart is not a prize to be taken. She enjoys the songs, accepts the gifts, favouring each man's offering equally, barely at all. Vesper enjoys the challenge, rises to it. His friend does not. While one seeks Reela's company, gets to know the woman behind the face, builds a relationship and a history, the other hangs back out of respect, out of fear. Weeks become months. The squires practice every day, wanting to stay sharp for their mission. Often they discuss the need to leave. Often they argue. Young desire holds them, however, the murky dream of their destination unable to compete with more immediate, lustful fantasy. In the end, Reela chooses Vesper. The other squire nurses his bruised ego and keeps a lock of her hair, exchanged for a song, a failed talisman. Tragic. Months become years. A rumour circles about a northern village being visited by men the colour of wounds. They are beast speakers, masters of the infernal pack. They hunt fresh prey for the usurper. Untainted children and fertile women are their targets. The rest are allowed to run. Vesper's attendance to practice becomes sporadic. Instead, he patrols, hunting for the hunters. The squires see less of each other. When they do meet, the rows intensify. Always Vesper wants another week. Always his friend threatens to leave alone. Always Vesper mollifies him. The same tunes are sung, repetitive, over and over, until Reela's belly swells and the village celebrates. 9 months pass, fast for some, an agonizing torture for others. One night, a strange howling fills the air. Animals stir within their pens, and the young woman goes into labour. It is unclear whether the scent of new life brings it, or simply bad luck. But a creature pads into the village, searching the streets with mismatched eyes. People call for help, for their night guardian Sir Vesper and his trusty squire. The 2 young men come running from different houses.
See if you can distract it,
says Vesper. His squire raises an eyebrow in reply. As soon as it goes for you, I'll be there to finish it off. Classic feint and kill, okay? Vesper draws his sword, and the dogspawn snarls in reply. The other squire draws his practice blade. He has sharpened it over the years, given it an edge. It remains mute, however, ordinary. Circling closer, he tries to attract the dogspawn's attention, but the half-breed only has eyes for Vesper. Before he can make a distraction, it charges. All he can do is give chase, shouting a warning. Vesper doesn't need one. Hands tighten around the hilt, sweaty. The dogspawn leaps. Vesper jumps sideways, slashing as it sails past, opening a wound across hind leg and bottom. Like a common dog, the monster yelps, turning tail to run. Vesper gives chase, but another cry stops him. Reela's mother is calling. The baby is coming. Vesper has to choose, life or death, love or glory. The young man pauses only for a moment. I've got to kill it. You go check on Reela for me, okay? His friend agrees, and the two men run their separate ways. The village is out of medicine, and the doctor's equipment works sporadically, batteries giving their last in kicks and spurts. Reela's labour is primitive, painful as nature intended. The squire bursts in, red face redder as he sees legs spread and life fighting into the world. Vesper? She asks, reaching for him. He smiles shyly, careful to look only at her face. Sweaty hair clings to her cheeks and forehead. Blotches sketch themselves across her cheeks. Beautiful. Oh, she says. It's you. As he struggles to answer, she takes his hand. Over the coming hours, he tries to be supportive, transmitting care through clammy, kissing palms. Her grunts and cries go through him. Occasionally he sways, but he does not leave. In a burst of blood and noise, the baby arrives. Cords are cut, cuddles are given, and the assembled celebrate. The baby makes its first demands, and Reela meets them. A satisfied grunt makes them all chuckle. The squire forgets, reminds himself, looks only at her face. This stolen moment is his. He gobbles it down, hoping guiltily that Vesper will not return to spoil it. Reela smiles up at him. He smiles back. It takes him a moment to realize she's talking. Appetite. Thanks for being here. It means a lot to me, and to this little greedy guts. Would you like to hold her? Chapter 28. Metal stairs rattle alarmingly underfoot. Old paint flakes away in chunks, drifting lazily towards the water below. Some houses have been stacked neatly. Others hang from cranes above, metal boxes of varying size. Makeshift metal bridges run between them. Away from the affluence, hidden at the edge of the first circle, these dwellings are haggard. Clumps of children gather in doorways or on rooftops, legs swinging overhead. Restless, keen for entertainment. The vagrant stops, gets Harm's attention, and points to the nearest bunch.
You think there'll be trouble?
The vagrant nods. As if on cue, several faces lean over, eyes mischief bright.
You talking about us?
Asks the leader. thin bars of copper threaded through his hair.
No,
Harm replies.
I don't believe you,
Says the leader.
Reiki here thinks you're a spy, and they do bad things to spies here.
Harm sighs, turns to the vagrant. Can we go back now? The vagrant shakes his head. They walk on, but the children aren't finished with them.
Hey! Do you know that you're walking in our bin?
A few pieces of shrapnel whiz down, thrown by eager hands. The vagrant raises a protective arm over Vesper's head. Another comment is made, and the children laugh hysterically.
That's a good one, Reiki! Hey! Those stairs aren't just our bin, by the way. They're also our toilet.
There is more laughter as the children jump to their feet. Belts are pulled loose, trousers lowered. Harm and the vagrant run. Vesper laughs almost as hard as the gang above. They stop 2 streets away, gasping for breath. Harm has escaped unscathed, but a few dark patches have appeared on the vagrant's coat. He narrows his eyes.
More,
says Vesper.
Can we go back now?
Asks Harm. The vagrant nods wearily, but a new voice, unexpected, makes them jump.
Hello?
After a moment of looking, they see a boy, not yet in his teens, sitting on a platform above, staring down at them through meshed metal. He is slender, clean skin wrapped in patched clothes. He comes lightly down the steps.
Yes,
says Harm.
did you want something? I'm sure I could help.
The vagrant crouches down, setting Vesper next to him, and pulls some food from his pocket. Sharp eyes flit from the offering to the men. The vagrant beckons him closer.
What's your name?
Asks Harm.
What do you want it to be?
Disgust twists Harm's mouth.
Just give us a name. It doesn't even have to be your real one.
He leans closer to the vagrant, whispers in his ear.
Are you sure you want to pursue this?
The vagrant nods hurriedly.
My name is Chalk,
replies the boy.
I have the palest skin in all the circles, so they say. We're not interested in your skin. What's going on here? Why don't the guards come into this area?
Chalk reaches out, takes the food, and nibbles at it, unable to hide his excitement.
Of course, anything you want. How much do you know about 6 circles? Pretend it's our first visit. Pretend we know nothing.
Chalk nods sagely.
I understand. I'll pretend you're fresh and innocent. The guards never come in, and they try to keep us from getting out. They fail, of course. Who looks after you? Grigsy looks after us. Gets us whatever we need. He's your father?
Chalk giggles.
Do you have anything else to give me?
Knowing fingers brush the vagrant's thigh.
If you want to pretend some more, we could go upstairs together.
The vagrant's mouth drops open. Amber eyes widen in shock, then turn to Harm, seeking answers.
I tried to warn you. Is something wrong?
Asks Chalk, afraid.
Did I say something wrong?
The vagrant is still looking at Harm, his expression dark, Green eyes widen in understanding.
Are you sure about this?
Of course you are.
What's going on?
Asks Chalk. Vesper is lifted up, feet kicking the air, protesting, and given over to harm.
What's going on? We're going up now. Take us to your employer. I don't know,
says Chalk, backing away. He turns to run, but the vagrant is faster, grabbing his wrist firmly.
It wasn't a request.
They ascend the stairs slowly, accompanied by Chalk's constant begging. Other gangs are drawn to the commotion, contributing abuse and pieces of rotten food from their perches. Drawing level with the lower buildings allows glimpses of life. Most doors are open, wanton, with many dwellings doubling as shops. At this end of the ship, drugs and flesh are the top sellers. Harm stops them.
It's this one. How did you know?
Gasps Chalk as the vagrant drags him inside. Harm follows, holding Vesper tightly. Strip heaters provide dingy light. Ridged rubber lines the outside of booths, pale and black. There are 12 in all. 10 are shut. Active. The vagrant releases his grip, and Chalk clears his throat.
I'm in trouble!
A hard-faced man steps out of a booth. In his hand, casual, is a long brass bar. Did I hear there might be a problem, Chalky?
Yes. This man isn't very happy with me.
Ah, that right. The man turns his attention to the vagrant. Well, we got other lads might suit you better. Got girls too, if you prefer. You tell Griggsy. What do you need? The man twists the bar in his hand. Something wrong? You shy or just dumb? I got to tell you, I don't like the look in your eye. If you're not here for business, then you know the way out. Harm speaks into the silence.
He wants you to stop.
Stop what?
This.
Harm gestures to the booths. You have to be shitting me. I feed them, clean them, house them, and in return they make me good money. Everybody wins.
That was the wrong answer.
You're threatening me?
I'm not.
Harm replies, backing out of the room with Vesper. The vagrant flicks open one side of his coat, gripping the sword's hilt. Chalk presses himself against the wall. A seraph knight? Here! Griggsy shakes his head. Booth doors open, revealing a mix of faces, 3 curious, 3 scared, 2 bloodthirsty, 1 ashamed. Do you know what they do to seraph knights in these parts? Griggsy raises the bar, and the hairs on his arms stand to attention. No? Oh! With a cry, the sword is drawn. Sound buffets the assembled, judging. Blood runs from ears, from noses. Men run from the room. Griggsy stays, grits his teeth. As I was saying, I'll show you! Lightning arcs from the bar, aiming for the vagrant's chest. At the last moment, it veers away, drawn to the sword's edge. The 2 men stand, weapons held out front, energy crackling between them. The vagrant lowers the sword 90 degrees, and lightning flows backward until brass turns white. Grigsy drops the bar, screaming. It lands softly on the rubber floor. The vagrant steps forward, raises the sword to strike as Grigsy falls away from him, trying to plead but unable to shape words around the pain in his smoking hand. The vagrant pauses, sword humming above his head.
Why have you stopped?
Demands Chalk.
Kill him!
The vagrant looks into the open booths. A child huddles in each, sometimes two. They regard him with scared, empty eyes. He takes one hand from the sword and points to the exit. The children leave without question. Grigsy goes to follow, but the sword's point blocks his path.
I'm not going,
says Chalk.
I want to see.
The vagrant shakes his head.
I want to see you kill him.
The vagrant shakes his head, horrified, then grabs Chalk by the arm and throws him outside. He slams the door shut, sealing himself and Grigsy within. Outside, Chalk hurls himself against the door, but it doesn't budge. The other children stand in a daze. After a few moments, one of them shivers. Vesper watches them all with high eyebrows. Muffled screams penetrate the battered door, and light pulses around its edge. When the door opens again, Grigsy stumbles outside, weeping, meek. The vagrant follows quickly, sword pressing against the man's back. He stops only to look at Harm. Understanding passes between them, and the green-eyed man addresses the children.
We're leaving now. You can go home, or you can come with us if you want.
They look at him, faces asking what words dare not. Harm crouches to their eye level.
You won't have to do what you did before. I promise.
They descend the stairs, children trailing after. This time nothing is thrown or said. The gang's eerily quiet. As they emerge from the street, the guard rushes to meet them. With growing panic, she notes the wounded man, the streak of dirty children, the winged sword. A square of light flicks nervously into life at her throat.
Captain, I need you out here, right now.
In a three-sided room, in front of a triangular table, an injured man kneels. The vagrant holds him there. The council of three sit at the table, two voices competing for dominance, the captain and the dockmaster. Both are angry. Protocols have been ignored, feathers ruffled. Uren sits between them while they demand answers, hands over his face. Axler stands, pressing fists on blackened glass.
We'll get this filth processed, and then you can explain to us why a Seraph Knight is aboard, and why you chose to hide him from us.
Indeed, agrees Roger. Uren looks up, resigned, his gaze on the accused.
Fourth Circleman Griggs, your crimes are severe. The punishments will match them. Have you anything to say?
Roger snorts. There's nothing to say. Death's too good for him. The vagrant nudges the accused with his boot. Yes, Grigsy says. I did them things. I don't deny it. But I wasn't alone, and I weren't at the top.
Who was?
Demands Axler. The vagrant's boot insists again. Grigsy mutters. He was.
Uren pales. Who was?
Grigsy glances up, furtive, then down again. He shakes his head. I can't say. The vagrant's fingers dig deeper into the man's shoulder, and his face crumples. It was him, he gasps, pointing a charred hand at the dockmaster. Roger speaks quickly. Nonsense! This man is clearly just saying that to... He sees the sword shake at the vagrant's side and lets out a long sigh.
So be it. It's true. Before you cast any judgments, remember that I've kept everyone fed and resourced our escape.
He sees the look of shock on the other man's faces, and his own reddens with indignation.
Don't look so pious. You said yourselves that I've worked miracles. Well, miracles have a price, and now you know what it is.
He stands up, long fingers pressing tip to tip.
So, let's end this farce now, and get back to more important jobs.
As he turns to leave, the vagrant stares at Uren, expectant. The old man looks distraught. I can't. We need him. There's nothing I can do.
There's plenty I can do.
Axler's fists grind against the desk. Roger shakes his head.
Don't be so sure. Without me, there's no Silicate 4, no nappies, no fresh vegetables, no hazard spray.
He looks at Uren.
No pain meds.
Uren slumps forward, burying his head. Again, Roger goes to leave, but guards step forward from their corners, alert for orders. Axler makes a cutting motion with his hand. Take them both away! Arms are pulled back, sharp and hard. Grigsy weeps. Roger grits his teeth.
I make this machine work. This operation can't run without me, and when the payments aren't made, they'll want to know why, and they'll come.
He keeps talking, even as they drag him out.
You'll regret this. I promise.
"1 year ago. A squire sits on the steps of a house, enjoying the dawn. In his arms, a baby sleeps. He finds himself talking anyway, a stream of consciousness that roves from qualities of the sky through thoughts about life to worries and predictions of what will be. The world turns slowly, taking its time, making the morning stretch, calm, perfect. Vesper emerges from some trees, well away from the main path. Water drips from his hair and fingertips, squelching in his boots. It obscures the blood on his clothes. He raises his hand at the sight of his friend, and the squire waves back. "I have had the worst night ever," he exclaims, and flops down next to him. Old frustrations melt away, and speech comes easily. The banter of old friends excited with each other. "There were more dog spawn, a whole pack of the bastards." Vesper leans forward, resting his forehead on his palms. "I led them as far as I could and tried to shake them off, but they kept finding me. I tried wiping mud over myself, but that didn't work. I was getting desperate, so I thought, maybe mud isn't a strong enough smell." The other squire raises an eyebrow. "I found this puddle of shit.
I don't even want to think about what made it. And I rolled about in the stuff.
His friend tries to stifle laughter, not wanting to wake the baby. Tears run down his cheeks.
Anyway, that's between you and me, okay? It's not going to be part of the legend.
His friend begs to disagree, and soon they are laughing again.
Hold on. Hold on,
says Vesper, gasping for breath.
That isn't the end of the story. So I'm hiding there, stinking of suns knows what.
He holds up a finger.
Don't laugh, or I'll never finish. When I hear those things howling again, closer than ever, they could track me anyway. I was getting worried now, really worried. One of the pack found me and we fought. Needless to say, I defeated it, but I knew the rest of the pack wouldn't be far behind. Then I had another idea. I stuck my hands into the thing's guts and smeared its blood over me. I figured they were hunting a person, not each other.
The other squire's movement is slight, sliding away less than a foot, but the space between them is palpable.
You think I might be tainted? Like Tammy?
Vesper lets out a long, slow breath.
Me too. Do you think Attica was right to kill her? I mean, if I start to lose it in the head, I want you to put me out of my misery. Of course I do. Will you do that? For me?
The squire looks pained, but nods.
Thanks. I'd do the same for you. The thing is, if I just go a bit of a funny colour, or my veins stick out too much, well, I could live with that. I've heard that there are loads of tainted living in New Horizon, and they seem all right. It might be that there's a cure somewhere. Do you think Tammy would have been okay if she'd lived? Do you think...
Vesper looks away.
Whatever happens, I don't regret it. When it's a choice between death now or death later, I'll take later every time.
Yellow and red light blends together on their faces, warming. For a time they say nothing, thoughts trapped in closed mouths. As ever, Vesper is the first to break the silence.
So this is my child.
What is it, a girl? The squire nods. She looks a bit like me, don't you think? The squire smiles, shakes his head. Well, there is a bit of her mother in there too. I reckon she'll be a knockout when she grows up, having such good-looking parents. He winks, reaches for the baby, hesitates.
I better not touch her, you know, just in case.
Is Rita all right? He lets out another sigh at his friend's assurance.
Sleeping, I bet. She loves her sleep. Not like me. I can never get up early enough.
He rubs vigorously at his eyes.
Saying that, I could sleep now. I'm so tired. I took a long route, skirting the far side of the village, washed myself as best I could, and took another winding route home. I walked through every stream I came across, did my best to hide my tracks, and when I was a mile or so away, I waited, just in case. I didn't know how long I sat in those bushes. I got so cold that for a while I thought I'd die of exposure, which would have been completely unheroic. Nothing came for me. At first light, I figured I was in the clear and came to find you.
A yawn splits his face. Then another.
I'm just going to sit here for a while, in case anything comes back. Rest my eyes. Hopefully we've seen the last of them. At least till nightfall. Wake me if anything bad happens.
Seconds later, Vesper is asleep. He is woken by the howls of the approaching pack. Barely an hour has passed. The village scrambles into action. Houses are locked and people arm themselves. A lucky few with real weapons, the rest with tools. The squire emerges from the house, having swapped a baby for a sword. Vesper remains where he was, on the ground, saving his energy. Expression grim, he listens to the enemy's cries.
There are lots of them.
This could get ugly. The other squire raises his sword. Vesper stands up. No. You have to leave. His friend starts to protest, but Vesper cuts him off. Listen to me. I don't know if we can handle this. Even together, even with the whole village behind us, I don't know. He looks hard at the other squire, lowers his voice. It's probably our fault they're here. You were right. We should have left a long time ago, but we didn't. We have to finish the mission. They both know Vesper speaks truth. The squire turns to leave, but stops when he notices the other isn't following. Sorry, I can't come with you. This place is my home. My family is here. I can't abandon these people, but you have to, for the greater good. Vesper's friend sags. There's no time for this. You have to go. You have to finish the mission. Now! The squire looks back at Reela's house. Don't worry. I'll protect them with my life. He grits his teeth and runs home. The door is left open, swinging, as he packs hurriedly. Essentials are grabbed, the long box, travelling clothes, and a pouch of coins that were the Knight Commander's, then Attica's, now his. Before leaving, he checks, twice, that the lock of Reela's hair is safe in an inner pocket. The house he abandons is bare, impersonal. It is not home. Even so, the squire hesitates, unwilling to leave the world he knows. He is spurred on by another round of howling, distant, closer. Outside, Vesper is waiting. I was beginning to think you would never come out. Both men pause, lacking the words or the time to find them. The squire spreads his hands, gives a sad smile, and starts north quickly. Vesper finds his voice at the last minute. If you make it to the Shining City, tell them about me, okay? And exaggerate. I'd like my statue of honour to be a bit taller than I am. The squire wipes at his face, starts to run. Howls get louder behind him. Eventually, they turn to shouts, then to screams. The road ahead gets harder to see, tear-blurred. Running is unsustainable. So is walking. Despite the logic of leaving, he finds that he can't go on, that it isn't in him to abandon his friends. He stops and draws his sword. Morning's light points out its insufficiencies. Another moment's indecision. Then he casts it aside, kneels down, and opens the box. Inside, wrapped in a cloak, is Gamma's blade. In reality, it is only slightly longer than those used by the Seraph Knights. To the squire, however, it appears massive, too big for his hands. The hilt is unique. Silvered wings curl protectively around something sleeping. The squire's fingers brush the grip. He pauses, but nothing terrible happens. The sword does not wake. His fingers remain as they were. He picks up the sword, still in its sheath, and attaches it to his belt. Committed now, the squire turns and runs back towards the village. As it comes into view, horror stalls him. A few of the bolder people lie in the street, weapons torn from bloody hands, moaning. Doors cry out as dogspawn throw themselves against them. On the outskirts, men and women watch with mismatched eyes. Their skin is livid red, a full body sore, covered by too few clothes. In the square, Vesper fights on. Two of the pack bleed out by his feet, but they have cost him. The would-be knight holds Attica's blade one-handed. The other arm hangs useless. Long teeth have made shreds of his trouser leg, letting blood flow unimpeded. The grin on his face, once cocky, is forced, held on by habit alone. The squire sees the carnage, knows that this is his last chance to save what he loves. Still, a part of him cringes in fear of what is to come. At his side, the sword begins to hum, the wings at the hilt quivering, starting to unfurl. The squire holds the hilt tightly and draws. As the blade rises, so does a note from deep within the young man. It bursts upwards, pushing out his chest, punching through his throat, springing wide his jaw, to soar malevolent into the air. Silvered wings stretch to either side of the sword's hilt, revealing a closed eye that twitches madly. The sword's sound shakes the very essence of those unfortunate enough to hear it. Pure, otherworldly, too much for a mortal to control. Breath begins to burn. Panicked, the young man tries to close his mouth, but finds he cannot. The note distorts, twisted by rage, by grief. The air becomes fire and lightning, noise and fury. An eye opens. Chapter 29. In first circle, rumours dance. Names are brushed with slander, with truth, and moved on to partners new. Dark mutterings rise and fall with the waves, intensifying when Uren's call comes. The council wishes to address its people, summoning them to the base of the tower. At midday, the people answer. The background hum of countless engines fades to quiet, giving the sea its voice once more. Pilots step from their boats, passengers unpack themselves from the hold, and en masse they go. Uncertain streams pouring into the central courtyard, each from a different street, running together, unwilling to mix. Worried faces pack the surrounding space and nearby houses. Some lean from windows or squish together on grassy rooftops. Guards move protectively in groups of 4, patrolling the perimeter. Axler stands ready, lance charging in his hands. A figure appears on the tower's high balcony. His head is nearly bald, reflecting spots of red and gold. To those on the ground, he is indistinct, small, remote. Amplifiers bring his voice to the assembled, smoothing over cracks, adding gravitas. Uren begins.
People of First Circle, I bring sad news. Yesterday a matter was brought before me. A terrible business. Even here, on our little floating island, it seems we are not free from abuse or crime.
The great disk rocks gently, as if moved by the words. Uren is forced to grip the railings as he continues.
Not only is there corruption on board ship, corruption that hurts our most innocent, but that corruption goes through every level of our society, right to its core.
Words sink in, but another, greater wave steals their effect. This more literal force rocks First Circle, making people stumble into one another like dominoes fighting for balance. Even as senses recover, something rises from the depths, ascending alongside First Circle. Water runs down its sides, giving shape. The new vessel is a relic of the Empire, a wave maker, its blunt nose angling 30 meters high, the rest cloaked in ocean. Other ships follow it up from the depths, smaller, each bearing modified symbols of the winged eye. On one, the wings have been scratched away. On another, the eye is painted over, forced shut. A third is covered by scores of bloody handprints. There are 7 in all, spread evenly around first circle, surrounding, intercepting hope. Axler's voice punctuates shock, scrambling guards into defensive positions. A short distance across the water, the ships wait. They bear no flags. Broken swords hang above the decks, suspended from cables. The wind makes them chime, off-key and eerie. Silence stretches, and cannons slide from hatches, massive, mocking the tiny rifles held against them. High above, 2 skyships drop from cloak, circling, full stops on a declaration of superiority. From one of them, a lone figure climbs into view. Loose-cut clothes sit over skin-tight body armor. Hard plastic covers the face, giving nothing away. No weapons are evident, and yet there is a sense of threat in its manner. Polite, but present. As the crowds watch, it leaves the safety of the cockpit. Sure steps carry it across the wing, untroubled by wind pulling at sleeves. Eventually, it stands high above first circle's edge. With a performer's timing, arms are raised. It jumps. Several people look away, not wishing to see the landing. Impact. Legs bend into a crouch, absorbing the force, not breaking. Standing, the figure pulls off the mask, turning to allow all a good view. Half of its head is bald and ridden with old scars. Hair flows from the other half like streamers in the wind, white, grey, and black. Behind it, the skyships descend slowly. 2 butterflies that sit, watchful, a few meters above the water.
"I am the first,"
it shouts.
"And I am not human."
It pauses, letting fear travel.
"I have come here to make you an offer. I hope you will appreciate my candor, a quality I often find lacking among your people."
Go ahead,
replies Axler, voice amplifiers emphasizing his disgust.
"I did not come to this."
The first waves a hand, searching for inspiration.
"Shape by choice. To survive, I was forced to seek a host, one of your kind, or rather, many hosts, since no single one of your physical structures is enough to sustain me. But this one, the primary body,"
it places its palms across its chest.
"This one was damaged when I claimed it. As you know, we came to you in a place of war, a time of chaos. I have sustained this body up till now, but the time is coming when I will need a replacement."
never!
Shouts Axler. The first regards him for a long moment, and then gives a bow.
"You are a man that knows his mind. I acknowledge that. But this offer is for everyone here, and I have not yet made it. If you change your mind after hearing me, I will understand.
I want to hear it,
says a voice from the crowd.
And so you shall, replies the first. Simply put, I need one of you to be a receptacle for my essence. They must be unsullied by any of my kin, pure. That individual's being will be subsumed and will, as you understand it, become me.
It pauses again.
In return, I will gift the rest of you with smaller portions of my essence. Those recipients will be changed in other ways. They will be connected to me, but distinct. Independent, but never alone. They will also enjoy extended lifespans, the ability to supersede their fellows in physical contests. They could, for example, duplicate my jump onto this ship. They will share my spectrum of perception and be able to control their old senses more directly. Disease will not threaten them again, nor will mediocrity. I am not the usurper. I do not seek to subjugate you. Neither am I the uncivil. I do not seek to control you. Nor am I like the Seven, who accept your loyalty and leave you to die. I am the first, and I believe that we can coexist. Together, we are strong enough to live in a different way, beholden neither to my kin in the south or your masters in the north. There is a price. I will repeat it. One of you must give yourself to me, willingly and without coercion. That person will cease to be. In return, I will give that life back to you tenfold.
Whispers begin, tentative. Individuals seek to know their neighbours' minds without revealing their own. Axler steps forward, pointing his lance towards the first.
That thing is a monster, and if anybody approaches it, they'll have to answer to me.
He addresses his guards.
Hold!
Hold the line. Nobody crosses it on either side without my permission. Guards form up as Axler fights his way to the line. The goat does not follow, watching from a safer distance.
Also,
the first adds,
I am loyal to those who deal with me. You hold a friend of ours. His name is Roger. You will return him immediately, or I will be forced to demonstrate my loyalty. You do not want that.
The vagrant stands at the back of the crowd, battered coat blending, easy to miss. Those who know seek him out, pushing their way to his side. Among them number a half-dozen children. Their dull eyes trail after a boy called Chalk. The others are lean, professional survivors, led by 3 sisters from Slake. He glances at them, frowns. Worries settle on his shoulders. Get comfortable. Beyond the press of people, beyond the ring of guards, he sees Axler squaring off with the first. Soon it will break, one way or the other. From his vantage point, he scans the crowd, noting groups, the shifting stances, weighing the mood. He takes a step forward, hesitates. There are many expressions on display, none friendly. Harm arrives at his back, Vesper hoisted on one hip. He leans in close, lips brushing the vagrant's ear, keen to keep their secrets.
We have to go now. Genna knows a way. We can escape.
The vagrant turns, and Harm gestures to the young guard loitering in a nearby alley, uniform far from formation, conspicuous.
Come on.
The vagrant looks at those who gather close to them, looks back at Harm.
I don't know. We'll take as many as we can, but it has to be now.
The green-eyed man tugs at his sleeve. He looks at the first, then to Genna, and back again. The sword shakes in its sheath, wingtips drumming his thigh. He clenches the hilt, muffling with his fist. It pulls at his arm, keen to attack. Harm pulls at the other. The vagrant closes his eyes. Gentle undulations pass under the boat's surface, encouraging. Samael works quietly, using currents and winds and sailors' intuition to close the gap between them and their prey. Dedication is total, but sometimes muscles are misplaced. A jaw falls slack, flapping in the wind. A sphincter loosens. A tongue lolls. The commander watches him, noting the signs. He has seen this before. It's the world beating down on them, growing angrier with each passing day, driving their essence deeper within their shells. The further north they go, the worse it will become. It would be good to catch the malice soon, before it slips from reach completely. Samael signals him even as he senses it. Another enemy, stronger than him, more numerous, known. He joins his servant by the prow and stares at the horizon, willing shapes to appear. Soon they do. 7 warships surround his prize, and around them a web of essence spread thin across those on the boats and thinner to those beyond. It is the 1,000 Cuts, the unbound, the nomad king, the first. It is here in force, if not totality. The commander orders a wide berth be given, returning some distance so recently fought for. But even at a distance, the first will notice them sooner or later. The commander ponders what to do next, aware that time is running out. He remembers Patchwork, remembers its stealthy approach in verdigris, and suddenly a wash of memories surface, not his own. He remembers the technique required to dampen essence, remembers teaching it to her southern duke. The commander snarls. Not her southern duke, not hers. He is not her. He cuts the memory free of the uncivil's associations, lifting only necessary knowledge away. Calm returns. He orders Samael to silence the engine. Power cut. The boat moves slowly, drawn by waves alone. Samael continues his work while the commander lies out of sight, veiling their essence, softening, darkening. Gone. A second figure joins Yuren on the balcony. taller, thinner, a scarecrow next to a pumpkin. Roger clears his throat.
I am here!
Far below, on deck, the first raises a hand in greeting. Uren steps forward, tentative, and addresses the assembled.
4 years we asked for help, and none came. Even if we manage to cross the sea, there's no guarantee the 7 will help us. We've come this far alone, but if we are to survive, that has to change. Our engines are overtaxed, our rations stretched to their limits. There is only one road before us that guarantees our safety.
He turns to look at the first.
And so, in my capacity as councilman, and on behalf of everyone on this ship, I accept your offer.
The red on Axler's face turns to purple.
You've sold us out!
Uren looks at Axler, imploring.
Counselor, this is what you wanted too. You have been against going to the Shining City from the start, as was Roger. The first is offering us a chance at life. Stand with me. Together we can make this work.
The leaders of First Circle argue. Words carried high over heads, booming, thunderous above the hot mutterings of the crowd. Tension grows, becoming unbearable until Axler spits on the floor. He stabs a finger at the infernal.
Get yourself and the rest of your infected friends off my ship!
The first walks towards Axler, arms low and submissive, hands open.
But your leader has already accepted. By what authority do you reverse this?
I speak for every right-minded, untainted person on this ship!
Axler makes a signal, secret, and guards prepare themselves for action.
Do you? It seems to me you speak only for yourself.
Looks like we're about to find out!
Axler swings the lance into line with the first's chest.
You've got exactly 5 seconds to turn around and go back to wherever you came from.
As the first replies, Axler's lips shape numbers, counting down silently.
If you truly speak for the people here, put it to them. If the majority agree with you, I will leave without another word, and I will take Uren and Roger with me. If they do not, then you will give yourself...
Fire surges from the lance.
5!
Even as Axler's finger is squeezing, the first is moving, fast enough to race the flames. Heat explodes in the space where the first was, the edges of it reaching out to lick at a retreating arm, catching a flowing sleeve. Axler has time to look surprised, the infernal weaving around the stream of fire and underneath his lance. Fabric bursts alight, making a tail behind the first's palm as it slams open into Axler's side. In sympathy, ribs and armor crack together. The lance goes quiet, and its bearer falls to the floor. Ignoring the flames creeping over its shoulder, the first moves forward for a second attack. A lone guard, a lowly private, steps up behind the first. Grabbing a flaming wrist in both hands, she shouts, "Help!" Before anyone else, the first responds. Twisting a captured arm, it grabs Private Rowe by the elbow, making their hold mutual. Its free hand blurs against Rowe's body, drilling into her stomach till she hangs limp, a long sack full of broken bones. The guards hesitate, lacking the conviction to finish what their captain started. But Captain Axler is not quite finished. He speaks from his position on the floor, amplifiers catching every rattle and bubble in his throat.
Attack! Attack together!
He reaches for his lance, but finds that someone has kicked it away. Boots appear alongside, disrespectful, too close. He tilts his head back to see behind and finds betrayal inverted. He sees First Circle citizens all around him and a crowd gathering behind his guards. His people raise their rifles, ready to fight at last, unaware they are facing the wrong way. Like a great wave, the crowd crashes over the line of guards, sucking them under, crushing underfoot. Before they reach him, strong hands slide under his body, lifting him high. The first raises Axler above its head, a wriggling trophy.
People of First Circle, I accept your offer. There is but one obstacle that stands between us now. I wish for peace, but the Seraph bring only noise and hate. You harbor one with the longest and sharpest of tongues. Reveal him to me.
An image projects into the air. It shows a static man, unimpressive. His long coat worn by travel, his face weather-aged.
He was here!
Shouts a voice from the back. The crowd parts quickly, revealing nothing but an empty alleyway and the back end of a goat fleeing the scene. Despite everything, Axler finds strength for one last smile. They run, footsteps echoing through empty streets. Though Vesper is carried, her feet move in sympathy with the others. When they reach Deke's boat, the engines are already running, prow out to sea. Without a word, they pile on, packing along the wings, each additional body pushing the boat a little lower. Deke casts off as the last one joins them. By the time the goat catches up, a space yawns between First Circle and escape. The goat's eyes narrow. She doesn't slow down, glare fixed on her target. Hooves kick on plasteel, then air as she sails over the water, a meteor, malevolent. Vesper points, delighted. Her shadow falls across the vagrant, who turns, too slow to escape fate. Alt! Man becomes crash mat, and the boat rocks, water spraying up, dappling faces. While things settle, harm crawls closer to the cockpit.
What's the plan?
Deke swings the boat around, threading between the waiting warships and First Circle's curves, a lizard slipping under the noses of lions. 2 skyships come into view.
That's the plan.
The nearest one notices their approach, and a pilot steps out, weapon in hand. Genna's rifle fires twice, silent, silencing. No more challenges come, and they dock, unloading from one vessel into another quickly. Deke whispers into his hand, and his boat turns in the water, facing the other skyship. He pats the controls affectionately and climbs aboard alongside Genna. Hands move expertly, and the skyship trembles, readying for flight. Harm watches them from a corner, his face hidden behind 2 elbows and a shoulder.
"You've done this before?"
"Nope," replies Deke. "Never stole a skyship before."
Genna laughs. Harm doesn't. As they push heavily into the air, Deke's old boat speeds towards the remaining skyship, engines brightening until the glow hurts to watch. The older, flightless bird collides with her younger cousin. The explosion is loud, satisfying. Vesper covers her ears. Below them, 7 warships wake, cannons humming to life, eager for attention. Too burdened to dodge, the skyship relies on her shields for survival. Many of the shots fly wide, many don't. Each collision saps the protective light, drawing on precious reserves. By the time they fly clear, worried bleeps sound from flashing displays. Overloaded, underpowered, the skyship travels on, till flying becomes gliding, till gliding becomes falling. Chapter 30. From a distance, the skyship appears graceful, skimming across the water, a stone cast by a playful god. Inside, each bounce is magnified. Heads and knees bash against walls, against each other. Bruises bloom, and distress sounds loud, filling the cramped space. The bounces get smaller and more frequent, until, at last, the skyship merely drifts. Passengers find themselves alive. Injuries widespread, but minor. Nobody celebrates, saving that for Deke's appraisal of the ship and their chances.
"Well," he reports, "she ain't flying again, but I reckon she can still manage calm waters. Second time that's happened. If I'm not careful, I'm going to get me a reputation."
He deploys 2 emergency rafts, self-inflating spheres of plastic that he tethers to the mother vessel. Powerless, but buoyant, the rafts are soon stuffed with people. A few have followed the Vagrant on this last leg to the shining city, a mishmash of people from different places. Deke and his nephew Genna come from 6 circles. Chalk and the other escapees from Griggsy's employ tag along, as much to avoid going home as to travel anywhere specific. And lastly, there are those rescued from Slake, who survived sickness, travelled to the wall, and fled to First Circle when it fell. Vesper sits up front with Deke, both talking rapidly. Occasionally they wait for the other to finish. Often they giggle. The goat stands on one wing, at ease with the rocking motion. The Vagrant sits on the other. Harm is crouched by the cockpit's entrance.
"Deke, can I ask you something?"
"Sure can, long as you don't mind me answering it."
"Do you think we can make the journey like this?"
"Well, we can't just blunder any old way across the waves like one of them big cruisers. We got to work with the currents and the winds where we can." He pats the dashboard. "This old girl's got all the regular charts stored. Plus, I got a few I found the hard way."
Harm begins to relax.
"Aren't you worried about the first following us?"
"That's land thinking, that is. Not much point worrying. No, if any hostile vessel finds us, we're screwed. Just like if the weather turns bad, or if one of our engines gives out, or if...
Harm cuts in.
I think I get it now. Thanks, Deke.
You should take your cue from Vesper here.
Vesper?
Yep. This little fella's a natural. When everything's going all right, best thing you can do is sit back and enjoy it until things turn to shit, which they surely will.
Silence takes over. The open sea encouraging contemplation. The suns swirl slowly out of sight behind a bank of cloud, hastening darkness.
Hi, everyone!
Calls Deke cheerily.
Good news! We're not far from the spine run. We can follow the land for miles and make good time, and my nav pack will get us through the rocks, no problems. When the suns are up tomorrow, we'll start the run. In the meantime, we can get some rest on Tail Rock.
Tail Rock is neither long nor thin. Shaped like a battered spade, its name comes solely from its position, the first in a line of undersea mountains that march to the horizon. They set up camp. The goat sets off to explore and is uninspired by the local army of seabirds and their messy paintwork. The humans need no more excitement, happy to huddle in the camp. Most people fall quickly to sleep. A circle of heaters provide warmth and gentle light, reassuring and soft. Conversations become reflective, intimate, then fade away, to be forgotten. Hours later, a scrabble of hooves on stone stirs people awake. Birds shriek and take to the air, abandoning nests and young. Desperate calls penetrate the skulls of even the heaviest sleepers. The goat charges past camp and leaps onto Deke's ship. Without pause, she dives into the cockpit, vanishing from sight. Lights are turned to full. People look at each other and then at the blank sky for answers. At the vagrant's side, the sword stirs, restless.
Up there,
says Chalk, shining his light upward. On the rocks, high where the birds usually hold sway, is a silhouette. Broad, imposing. Armour glints in patches, is dark in others. The silhouette moves, drawing a sword that twists and moans, challenging. The lonely sound lingers, hanging in ears long after it should.
I don't hear any others,
says Harm. Genna unslings his rifle.
Let's take it together.
I'm not usually up for a fight, but if you need me, I'm there,
adds Deke. Two of the three sisters from Slake share the sentiment. The rest appear lost, frightened. They back towards the ship, following the goat's example. The vagrant's gaze seems distant as he takes in their faces. With closed eyes, he plants a kiss on Vesper's forehead. It is a goodbye, unwelcome. Vesper clings to the vagrant, crying as her fingers are prized free. Harm's waiting arms are poor consolation.
So, what's the plan?
Asks Genna, nervous and eager. The vagrant puts his hands on the young man's shoulders, easing him back into his seat.
But I don't get it. We're with you. We all are. We're ready to fight.
The vagrant nods, begins to back away.
You don't have to do this alone.
After a last, sad smile, the vagrant begins to climb. In desperation, the guard turns to Harm.
I don't get it. Why'd he smile at me? Because that's what I normally say. And because it's not true. Even if he wanted to be, he's never alone.
High up, the rocks are slippery with sea foam and bird droppings. The commander watches the bearer of the malice clamber towards him. There is an impulse to strike now, send the enemy to their death on the stony beach, but another, less logical, makes him wait. A reason comes after. The malice must be destroyed, its essence ruined, silenced. To lose it to the sea would mean death for the master and himself. But it is not reason that stays his hand. With growing self-awareness, he knows this. The thought is without context or sense, unsatisfying, nothing more than the fact it would feel wrong. Of late, the commander misses his former certainty. Imprisoned in his hands, the tainted sword cries ceaselessly, metal twisting free of shape, stretching, threatening to split, then falling back, a blade again. When the bearer finishes his climb, he pauses, chest heaving. The commander waits for the mortal to recover breath and approach. It is not the first time the two have met, but previously one has fled the other, or third parties have been distracting. Now, when the malice wakes and the air bursts with light, the two see only each other. The commander notes the bearer's face, the open mouth, the wide eyes. He is used to inspiring fear and horror, but this is different. This is the shock of recognition. The bearer knows him, has seen his shell before. The commander wonders if it will have a chance to pluck that knowledge from the bearer's mind before destroying him. They raise their swords. Neither are knights, but both use the salute of the seraph, compelled by habits thought forgotten. The malice strikes first and quickly, crackling with rage. Each physical attack is parried, but the commander feels sparks showering his chest, disturbing the essence within. To be this close to the malice is draining, and the commander realizes that the fight cannot be allowed to go on for long. He forces the bearer to fight at his pace, swinging powerfully, relentlessly, pushing the enemy back until his feet slip on uneven stones. Taking the opportunity, the commander feints and chops for the wrists. The enemy uses a complex counter, reversing the attack, changing the flow of combat, moving smoothly into a combination, blurring and brilliant. Familiar. The commander blocks the first flurry unconsciously, his shell doing what is needed without instruction. Partway through the combination's second section, he predicts where the malice will strike next. Again, without context, he knows these movements, knows that they are his creation. A wave of exultation passes through him as he steps unexpectedly, throwing the enemy off balance and aiming to take off a leg. Somehow the enemy brings the malice down to parry, but the bearer's stance is weak and the commander pushes harder, his sword biting deep into a thigh until a wild swing of the malice forces him back. Rage sings out from the sword, making armor vibrate, shaking the very glue that holds the commander together. He bears the discomfort, seeing the move for what it is, desperate. The sword sings a different note, and the bearer lays the flat of the blade against his recently injured thigh. Skin sizzles as the bearer's wound staunches itself, purifying, painful. Agony clouds eyes with tears, squeezing them shut. The enemy is stunned, momentarily blind and defenseless. The commander takes his chance. Moaning, his sword comes down, meeting another as it swings across. For the enemy is not blind. A third eye, the sword's, remains open, blazing fury. The parry is elemental, inhumanly strong, and in a shower of shards and relief, the commander's sword shatters. He is left with the hilt, smoking, useless. He throws it away. Unarmed, he watches his half-fallen opponent, twisted down on one knee, racked with pain. Gauntleted fists clench, swinging for the bearer's head. To the commander, it seems as if the sword is the first to rise, drawing the bearer with it. His first strike is parried, then the second, severing both limbs at the elbow. He lets momentum carry his body forward, moving inside the malice's reach, slamming into the bearer. They fall together, the commander pinning his enemy with weight alone. Amber eyes stare into the darkness of his visor, held by the wisps of green moving inside. Unarmed, maimed, the commander has one gambit left, to bend the bearer to his will. Essence moves through the slits in the commander's visor, a smoke that drips down onto the bearer's face, slipping through his skin, making contact. Physical things fall away, becoming distant, irrelevant. The commander exists outside of time, gathering within the fog inside the soul of the man. Here there are no secrets. Through the man's eyes, the commander sees himself, experiences revulsion and something else. Sadness? Yes. When he looks at the commander, he remembers the previous inhabitant of his body, the knight commander of the Seraph and loyal servant of the Seven. The commander sees an image, a bearded man with hard eyes and a harder voice, proud, quick-witted, and tough as stone. He is mesmerized by this, and the awe it inspires in the bearer. To learn more becomes all, and the commander pushes harder, deeper, immersing himself in the past. But then he detects another vein of memories, even richer than the ones on his tongue, and he chases them. But each time he gets close, they recede deeper, teasing him, luring him on. He follows without question, drawn by another presence lurking within the bearer's soul, more dangerous than memories. And then, within the dark soup of their shared essence, he hears a sound, reverberating deep inside. It is majestic, mournful, bigger than both of them. The malice. It calls to him, and he finds himself answering in a voice not his own. Hidden within his own confusions, the conflict between himself and the master, the questions and possibilities raised by the uncivil, the mystery of his past. The commander feels something else stir, an echo of the malice that lies within him, that has always been there, sleeping. Around him, the sense of man fades. Murky fog burnt away by star-bright essence, silver-laced and edged in darkness, a chorus of wings spiraling around an eye. And before thought can form, it takes him. 1 year ago. From above, the arrangement of bodies seems artful. A man lies on his back, arms splayed at right angles. Smoke drifts gently from his open mouth. At his side, the sword sleeps, sated. In the immediate vicinity, the ground is scorched black, and small lumps are scattered around him, a decorative pattern. Further away, the shapes increasingly retain form and colour, becoming men and beasts, infernal and half-breed, all lying together, unified in emptiness. The village is silent. Only the man's chest moves, and only then with reluctance. Time passes. From somewhere nearby, crying begins. Amber eyes open and stare blankly at the sky. They fail to track the movement of the clouds. Time passes. Eventually, they close again. The crying continues, muffled, pathetic. Eyes squeeze tight against the sound, then fly open, painfully aware. The man rolls onto his side and gets up. Every movement is laboured, an act of will. He stumbles forward, leaving the sword in the ashes. He does not need to listen to know which house the crying comes from. The building looks battered, its front door buckled, half torn open. He finds the energy to run. Inside is carnage. A dog spawn has been killed with improvised weapons. Broken handles protrude from its flanks, and nails pepper its sides. One has lodged in the half-breed's skull, an upside-down exclamation mark. 3 corpses are also present, made messy by jagged teeth. Their blood carpets everything. He kneels by a woman's broken body. She lies on the floor, face down. Even so, she is recognizable. Rila. Gently he turns her over, revealing a ruined landscape of arms and chest. He stumbles backwards, blood-stained hands covering his mouth. Rila is still in her bedclothes. It is clear that she fought the dog spawn unarmed. It is easy to imagine the fight was short. Colour drains from his face as legs waver. A wall catches him, and he leans into it, eyes closing. After a while, stunned ears tune in to the crying. It has become hoarse now. He crouches down and looks under the bed to find a face, purple and strained, looking back at him. There is no decision to be made. He pulls the baby out and lifts it up, striding from the house with quick steps. He doesn't look back. The sight already dream-etched, permanent. Once outside, he tries to soothe the screaming child, but no words come. Just a pain that flares in the throat. Slowly, he sinks to his knees, holding the baby close. Both cry. After a while, the baby sleeps. He gets up again. Evening is coming, and he uses the last of the light to count dog spawn bodies. There are many, but not enough. Somewhere in the nearby woods, the pack endures. He collects the sword, pulls a coat from one of the corpses, wrapping it around him and the baby. Its forehead rests against his neck, alarmingly hot. He frowns and starts toward New Horizon. A broken man with no voice, no friends, and no home. A vagrant. The suns dip below the horizon, and howling starts as if on cue. He does not try and hide his tracks. Chapter 31.
I've seen worse,
says Deke, bending forward, hands on thighs.
But I've seen a lot better.
Will he live?
Harm asks softly.
I reckon. Might not be so lively for a while.
The vagrant lies flat, covered with a blanket. On the exposed ground, winds are cruel. All present shiver.
Course, the real question is how we're going to get him back down again.
Shh,
says Harm.
I think he's waking up.
They watch him expectantly, Deke blowing into cupped hands, Harm biting his lip. With a grimace, the vagrant wakes.
Welcome back,
says Harm. The vagrant returns the smile, grimaces again. His hand moves questioningly towards his right temple.
Careful, Scout,
warns Deke.
We haven't had a chance to clean you up yet.
More gently, the vagrant explores the side of his head. He finds stripes cut through his hair. Where he touches the skin, it's smooth, burn white. Fingers track down to where a sliver of metal threads through his cheek, welded in place.
Did he use one of them shrapnel guns on you, Scout?
The vagrant shakes his head.
A grenade?
No, says Harm. Genner says he saw the other knight's sword explode.
Damn. So you got him good then, Scout?
The vagrant sits up and stares at the two severed arms lying side by side, then nods, uncertain.
Are you in pain?
Asks Harm. In answer, the vagrant holds up a hand, finger and thumb a 1/4 inch apart.
Bearable, then. Enough to let us winch you down?
Gonna have to be,
interrupts Deke.
We put plenty of the good stuff in your veins. It ain't gonna get any easier than this.
The vagrant draws back the blanket, pointing to a silvery patch on his thigh. He raises an eyebrow.
Your face ain't too pretty no more, but it's mainly just surface stuff. Your leg is where the problems are going to be. Don't worry, though. I happen to have some top-of-the-line burn meds stashed away for a rainy day.
The old man winks.
Best not to ask how I came across them.
They winch him down the rocks to a collection of waiting hands that carry him to Deke's boat. Despite the discomfort, the vagrant relaxes, letting others take his weight for a time. Before he is stowed aboard, sleep comes. At first light, the trio of vessels leave, daring the sharp edges of the spine run in return for its quick currents and shallow waters. The vagrant sits in his customary place on the wing, one leg outstretched, the other drawn up against his chest. Harm sits next to him. From the cockpit, Vesper calls.
Gone. What's that?
Asks Harm.
Gone. Gone? Gone. Gone? What's gone? Dada. No,
Smiles Harm.
he's right here.
The vagrant turns to face the toddler and smiles too. Vesper takes their smiles and doubles them.
Gone. Oh,
says Harm, realization dawning.
She's talking about your teeth. You must have lost one in the fight.
The vagrant's tongue probes around his mouth, finding the spaces. He sighs, holds up 2 fingers.
Don't worry. I'm sure they can fit you with new ones at the Shining City. When you get there, you'll be a hero. They'll probably promote you, maybe even build a statue in your honour.
Harm's laugh dies when he sees the vagrant's face.
Look, what I was trying to say is that things are going to change soon. and for the better. There's a place for you in the shining city. I'm just not sure if there's a place for me."
His voice quietens, getting harder to hear.
Deep down I knew this couldn't last, but it felt so good I didn't want it to stop.
He notes the vagrant's puzzled look.
"You don't know what I'm talking about, do you?"
The vagrant shakes his head.
"I don't think I'm going to be welcome where we're going. You saw what they did to those poor bastards on Third Circle. What do you think they're going to do to me?"
The next words he forces out, one by one.
"I'm tainted. Not badly like the hammer was, but enough. I picked it up in Wonderland long before I met you."
Green and amber eyes meet, and Harm doesn't bother to hide his shock.
"You knew? How? How long have you known?"
The vagrant reaches over the side and scoops seawater into his palm. Carefully, he rests the back of his right hand against the sword's hilt and touches Harm with his left. The water begins to move, magnifying the sword's tremors, tiny ripples making patterns, swirling.
"All this time I thought I was hiding it from you."
The vagrant shrugs, tips the water away.
"Do you want me to go?"
He shakes his head. Harm breaks away again, seeking solace in the ocean's calm.
"Before you make that decision, there's something I have to tell you. If you still want me around after that, I'll follow you wherever you go, no matter what. But if you don't, if after this you hate me or want to kill me, I'll understand."
Eyebrows raise, unnoticed. For once, Harm's focus is purely inward.
"I said I picked up the taint in Wonderland. I mean that, literally. It was about 2 years ago when I had the operation done. The uncivil surgeons gave me these eyes. It was an expensive procedure, more than I could afford. Most of the money was provided by other groups in the city as advance payment for my services. I knew it meant they'd own me for a while, but I thought I could handle it. I thought..."
He pauses.
"Maybe I didn't think much at all. I wanted to be special. Most of us do. The operation was supposed to let me read other people to tell if they were lying or if they intended trouble. It was supposed to make me rich. What I didn't understand, couldn't understand, was how it would affect me. My eyes work by taking in something of the people I'm close to, the same way their scents drift into my nostrils. Their personalities would drift into my eyes. That visual scent told me things about them, but it
Harm struggles to find the right word.
infected me somehow. I wasn't keeping the best company at the time, and my eyes exposed me to the worst parts of them, the hidden parts, the destructive, twisted parts.
Harm hangs his head.
And in me they found a way to be expressed. Ironically, the sickest of them came to like having me around. They felt comfortable around me, and I wonder now if my being there encouraged them in some way. Sometimes I copied them, sometimes they copied me, and sometimes maybe some of it was just me. I don't know. But I did things, terrible things that I can't take back. I fled from Wonderland, leaving a lot of unpaid debts. Tough call took me in, and for a while I found refuge with the rebels in Verdigris. I'd managed to get away from Wonderland, but in the end that didn't matter. There was plenty of darkness waiting in my new home, and it wasn't long before the same problems started again. And then you and Vesper came. I saw my chance for something better, and I took it. With you, I could be somebody different, and because you were good to me and you valued me, I started to feel like I could wipe some of the muck away and start being a person. I can't tell you how grateful I am for that. But I've always worried. Do I just tune into something in the two of you, or do I take it away? Am I stealing the best parts of you to help myself? And what if I'm stunting the growth of Vesper's personality? I couldn't live with that.
Tears spring from the corners of eyes. Bitter.
Actually, that isn't true. I could find a way to live with anything, and I probably would have kept quiet if I thought I could get away with it. So you see, Deke's wrong. Harm is a good name for me, and I haven't deserved to feel what I've felt since we started travelling together.
He falls quiet while water laps against the boat, counting time.
Well, there it is,
says Harm finally, unable to meet the vagrant's eye.
Do you still want me to stay?
The vagrant stares at his hands. It is unclear what he searches for. A sigh passes his lips, loaded with sadness and other things, inexpressible. He turns to Harm, who waits, hunched and miserable, and a mix of emotions pass his face. Decision made, he puts a hand on Harm's shoulder, rests it there. Deke skillfully navigates the spine run, and the three ships begin the last leg of their journey. Everyone is tired. The passengers, the engine, even the elements which remain mercifully gentle. Conversations go through stages of excitement, irritation, then graduate to a rough familiarity. Safe topics soon run out, and boredom encourages people to ask more searching questions. Eventually, these too fall away. Only the engine keeps going, getting noisier in its struggles, filling the quiet. Each day passes much like the last. Time drags out and compresses, a paradox that makes the hours long and the days short. Their arrival on the northern continent is understated. Away from ports and seaways, cities and flight paths, the boats limp to the finish. Once on land, the travellers celebrate modestly.
"This way!"
calls Deke, walking briskly towards a towering group of trees. Harm looks wary.
You know where you're going?
"Wouldn't be much of a pilot if I didn't."
The old man winks and taps his temple.
"That, and I got the maps tucked in here behind my eyeballs."
He leads them inland, into a forest. The trees here are thick and tall, and lined up smartly like spears for a god. Lower branches have been trimmed to keep the shaft smooth, but the upper canopy runs wild, 100 crazy haircuts weaving into one another. Deke slaps Genna on the shoulder.
You sure you ain't descended from one of these?
Very funny, Uncle D.
Everything is still, as if the wind holds its breath. No wildlife is in evidence, just lines and lines of trees, a lonely army. Even so, the wood appears vibrant to southern eyes. Fingers brush smooth bark as they walk, and more than one stoops to collect fallen leaves.
Down,
says Vesper. The vagrant stands her on the ground. Vesper wobbles for a moment, gaining balance, and then she is moving. Leaves crunch and twigs snap, tyrannized by busy feet. Deke holds up a hand, and the group slows.
What's wrong?
Asks Harm. Why are you always so cynical? Nothing's wrong. We're here, is all. Green eyes look across the matching trees.
Here?
Yep. The old man goes onto one knee and intones something soft and beautiful. Genna follows suit, joining him on the floor. Uneasy glances pass among the rest of the group.
What did you just say?
Asks Harm, suddenly tired. When Deke replies, the rough edges are gone from his words. My other name. From nearby, a song answers. The vagrant starts, recognizing it. Around the group, air shimmers in sudden heat, taking on the shapes of men, and in the blink of an eye, squires become solid, pointing blades. At their head is a man, unremarkable save for the deference given him by others. The vagrant knows him as Abel. He has cast aside his disguise from Slake in favour of a simple uniform, black save for the eye holding the collar close to his neck. He walks forward, crouching in front of Deke. The two press the backs of their hands together, and light flows where skin touches. A few seconds are all it takes for Deke's report to download. Abel stands smartly and walks out of the circle. Words are thrown over a shoulder. Keep them here while I report in. The goat assesses the scene and finds herself ignored. She trots over to some lush green shoots, keen to sample the delights of northern cuisine. Abel soon returns, flanking Sapphire. The knight is now dressed in her full armour, impressive, though travel has taken its shine. At her arrival, the vagrant kneels, pulling Vesper close. The rest of the group copy him, Harm a few beats after the others. So, she says, you made it. I was beginning to wonder. She looks down at Deke and Genna, favouring each with a nod. Well done, both of you. Your actions will not be forgotten, nor will they go unrewarded. Neither man replies, though both straighten. Harm grinds his teeth.
You abandoned us!
A squire steps forward, gently tapping the back of Harm's head with his pommel. The green-eyed man sprawls obediently, face down.
No!
says Vesper, reaching out, held fast by the vagrant's arm. Sapphire waits while Harm recovers his senses. We are not in the slums of Slake anymore. We are under the Seven's gaze, mere miles from the shining city. Remember that when you address me. And remember, it is a crime to lie to a Seraph Knight. Harm's eyes glaze with hate, but his mouth stays closed. Understand that I did not abandon you. When you diverted from the mission, I moved ahead to secure a way. Even then, I left orders to see you helped. My agents were waiting at key locations for your arrival. Wonderland, the Wall. She gestures to Deke and Genna. 6 circles. You don't honestly think you'd have got this far without my help, do you? It is unclear whom she addresses, so everyone shakes their head just to be safe. Abel, I want these people to be taken in and tested. Purge any you think will survive, yourself included. Yes, ma'am. The vagrant stands up and moves between Abel and Harm. Vesper trails after him. Sapphire folds her arms. They are going for testing, and you are coming with me, conscious or otherwise. Now get out of his bloody way! The vagrant reaches for the sword. Harm sees the motion, rushes forward, wincing as the squires close in behind. He grabs the vagrant's hand before it reaches the hilt.
Please, do what they ask.
Surprised, the vagrant looks at him.
I'm not asking out of fear. I need to do this. Everything good I've done has been because of you or Vesper. I need to know if any of it was me.
Hands squeeze each other tight, saying what words cannot. Abel moves close. It's time. Harm nods, allows himself to be led away with the others. Deke and Genna, Chalk and the children and adults from First Circle, the sisters and their companions from Slake. All go quietly. Half of the squires go with them. Before trees mask them completely, green eyes turn for the last time, filled with sadness and a hint of pride.
Bye, Humble Elm.
After a quick salute, Abel sets off after the group, leaving Sapphire, the vagrant, and 4 squires behind. Sapphire taps her foot. Abel, you've forgotten somebody. At her voice, he stops, reluctant.
Are you sure, ma'am?
I'll pretend I didn't hear that. Now hurry up and take the girl. He looks pointedly at the vagrant.
I think there may be a problem.
Look, she says to the vagrant. The girl's probably tainted. Better she's checked here. Helped if possible, given mercy if not. The 7 will not be so kind. And nor will I if you don't do as you're ordered. Now, Abel, I won't ask you again.
Yes, ma'am.
Before he or anyone else can act, the vagrant draws the sword. 4 squires surge forward, but the vagrant turns, and something in them falters. Sapphire and Abel are already on their knees. Surprised, an eye opens. Understanding dawns on young faces. Baby swords are dropped from shamed fingers, and suddenly they cannot prostrate themselves fast enough. By contrast, the vagrant brings the sword down slowly until the blade is an inch from Vesper's face. An eye looks at her sleepily. Vesper puts a finger to her lips. The sword is quiet. An eye closes. The vagrant takes a step nearer Sapphire, sword pointed towards her, offering judgment. She gets up quickly, backs away. "You've made your point. The girl can stay with you. Now please, put away the sword. The 7 are waiting." She backs off hastily and leads the way. The sword is sheathed. Only then does Abel stand. He bows deeply in the vagrant's direction and sets off at pace after the others. Squires dare to look up from the floor. They glance nervously after Sapphire, then back to the vagrant. He gives them a sharp nod, and they get up, retrieving their weapons. Vesper holds out her hand. The vagrant takes it, and the two make their way after the Seraph Knight, squires following after them. Chapter 32. Each day of his journey, the commander reminds himself, "I am not dead." It still feels as if he is falling, as if Samael did not pluck him from the rocks, as if the world is a watercolor he no longer believes in. Only the message is real. He carries it back to the coast, all the way to Wonderland. There is a building with many floors, some underground, some over. The commander navigates the complex corridors from memory. He is not sure if the knowledge to do so belongs to him or the uncivil, but he does not waste time on it. Such things are irrelevant now. Samael opens doors for him as they wind closer to the center of Wonderland. The commander could make contact anywhere in the city, but again a feeling of not rightness steers him. He will go to the heart of things, physically, geographically, as well as through essence. Robed figures step aside, deferent, allowing him to progress from Wonderland's outskirts to the uncivil's innermost sanctum, not understanding what the commander has become. Finally, they arrive. The chamber is 30 feet across, barely enough to hold the uncivil's inner shell. Her cloak is thick and woven from the dead. None of the original bodies remain, burnt away by the world's hatred, but the uncivil's legion of followers always find plenty to replace them. Her outer shell is the city itself, threaded with her veins, studded with her ears, and she grows, her people laying down the infrastructure that will allow her to spread to the coast. At all costs, she must be stopped. As he stumbles towards her, the song begins to rise. The uncivil senses it. He sees the necrotic ball sway from side to side in agitation, unable to move against him, unable to flee. He orders Samael to wait and walks the last alone. The surface of the uncivil's shell is smooth, individual pieces broken down and fitted together like a horrific jigsaw. It is almost flawless. Almost. Even with the best joinery, there are cracks between the bodies. Tiny, too small for a fingernail. It is easy for the commander to slip his essence inside. A moment later, his armored form clatters to the floor. Empty. Though the chamber appears quiet, a storm rages in the uncivil's shell, where essence swirls like a great sea trying to flee a tiny island. The commander opens himself, allowing Gamma's message to pass through him, a single note of merciless hate, a poisoned dagger between the ribs. Like a virus of fire, it radiates outward, using the uncivil's own connectivity against her. As the song of malice spreads through the uncivil's system, necrotic pipes are gutted, turned black from the inside. In surgeries throughout the city, procedures stop too early, sentencing patients to a gruesome end. And the song travels on, expunging all traces of the uncivil. In chambers beneath the city, smoke rises from inanimate fingers. Bone wings fall lifeless from their perches. In the markets, things continue as normal. Necrotraders haggle. People eat and drink, ignorant of the city's death. Underground, the cloak of corpses slowly sags, and green vapor leaks out. A remnant of essence seeking the commander's maimed shell. Samael blinks, orders surfacing in the blank pool of his mind. He jolts forward, taking the commander under the armpits, raising him up. Heavy boots slip on the cold floor, scrabble, and find purchase. Reoriented, the commander marches from the room, Samael following, like a shadow. By the time Sapphire realizes the goat is following them, the will to protest is gone. No one knows what motivates the goat to stay with the vagrant. There is no hint of love or loyalty. Familiarity or masochism keep her close in the leash's absence. Vesper strokes her side whenever she is foolish enough to come close.
Goat.
When she roams further afield, other objects become top of mind.
Tree. Leaf.
Sometimes she points at Sapphire. The vagrant puts a finger to his lips before any names can be bestowed. Quietly, smiles are shared. The woods draw back like a curtain to reveal undulating fields, topped in lush green. Every mound and hill is a dwelling, windows peeking like eyes through the grass. In places, towers of silver rise, sparkling, into the sky. They too are topped with gardens or a single grand tree. Endless labor keeps the borders between metal and vegetation neat. Workers hang, strung like spiders on harnesses, little black specks dangling among the splendor. For most, it is hard to see where the land ends and the shining city begins, and yet there are walls, invisible fields of energy ready to repel the unworthy. The vagrant feels them as he passes, the charge making Vesper's hair rise about her head, a dark and fuzzy cloud. They are met at the border by a group of knights. The title seems absurd for such fresh faces, and though few chronological years separate them, they seem like children next to the vagrant. High above, skyships squat on massive pillars, vigilant. Many of the pillars are empty, however, their landing pods bare. Between them, coffin-sized pellets float, moved by powerful magnets, the shining city's own army of secret magicians. A gaggle of children stream out of hidden hatches in the ground, cheering and waving at the knights. Adults come running after, long-suffering. Vesper's face goes blank for a moment. Then she jumps up and down, pointing to her chest.
Aspa! Aspa!
Together the children answer, voices light, harmonic.
Vesper!
When Sophia walks by them, the children kneel. The adults too. Only Vesper fails to swap enthusiasm for humility. She points at each child, naming, one after another, their identities broadcast into her brain. The vagrant walks on, a smudge against the open landscape, a stain in an otherwise sparkling crowd. Ahead of him rises the sanctum of the seven. He keeps his head down, keeps Vesper close. A small boy and a purple-skinned man help Samael roll the barrel through Verdigree's streets. All three sweat. Ahead of them, a man walks, his clothes shapeless and filled with oddities. Sweat has not found him for a long time. Alone, Samael could not manage the burden. While his essence continues to be changed within, the link between mind and body suffers and movement becomes grotesque. Frequent twitches possess limbs, making them dance, the movements surreal, alien.
Hey!
Calls a voice, deep and booming. It belongs to a usurperkin dressed in a marshal's uniform. The group stop.
What's this?
Ah!
Answers the leader, a smile materializing on his face.
Max, protector of small people. It has been too long.
Max scratches between his hair spikes.
Do I know you?
Next to goods of such quality, Eze is easily forgotten.
Puzzlement is personified on Max's face. He points at the barrel.
What's this?
Ah, you have keen eye. Surely this is why you have such important job. Come closer and Eze show you. You like shit, yes?
Yeah. What?
The shit you like? The finest droppings from the north, all from people and all untainted. For you, Eze will give a cup half price.
Large green hands raise as if warding off the barrel's contents.
Oh, no!
You sure, friend? It will sell like hot?
Eze pauses theatrically and then laughs, long and hard.
Still no? Well, do not say that Eze did not try.
He starts to walk on.
Come, roll faster. Your pay is not by the hour.
With weary sighs, the boy, the half-breed, and Samael get back to work.
Stop!
Says Max.
You change your mind? Eze knew you were a smart one.
No. You said that came from the north.
All true.
And we're not letting anything in from the north anymore. Tough call said so.
You see?
Shouts Eze to the three by the barrel.
This is exactly what I was saying to the boy earlier. Eze tried to explain, but he is young and not clever like you, Marshal Max. Of course, no trade from north of Verdigris. That would be necro shit. And no good fruit comes from that.
He smacks the boy across the ear.
Ow! Stupid child! Of course that is not what is here. No, friend. This fine barrel comes from the north of the north.
The north of the north.
Just so. Already you understand. North of the north are fine lands with the finest shit for growing crops. There is much demand for such things now food is scarce, yes?
Yeah,
Well, this has been good, Marshal Max, but time is against us. Ah, before Eze goes, would you do something?
What?
Eze pulls a box from within the folds of his robe. The purple-skinned man stares at it, envious.
For your sister.
Maxie?
You have other sisters?
No.
Marshal Maxie, then.
What is it?
More of the best, with Eze's thanks. Tell her to smoke slower this time, and to sit down first.
Right. I'll do that then.
Goodbye, then. And if you wish to sample what is inside, a little pinch will not be missed.
Eze winks and then rushes away, leaving Max to smile hopefully at the box. When the usurperkin is left far behind, Eze slaps Samael on the shoulder.
And that, friend, is why Eze's escort is worth paying for.
The group move on, taking back alleys and abandoned streets until, at last, they come to the south gate. Prepaid guards are quick to turn, blind-eyed, and the barrel is taken out of the city without trouble. Outside, they heave a sack from the barrel, grunting as they load it onto a waiting wheelbarrow.
What is this? A body of some kind? No, do not answer. You are a quiet man. I know ones like you. Say little, pay well. As I respect that. Good luck in your business.
He taps the side of his nose.
Whatever it may be.
Samael murmurs a thanks through two pale lips and walks away, pushing the barrow in front of him.
Ha!
Says Eze, turning to the barrel as soon as Samael has gone.
And now the newest dead tech in verdigris belongs to Eze. Bruce, you take the heart maker, hide it in the bag, and little Ez, you carry all the small things. And what will you carry, father? The burden of family. Now hurry, get them out.
Bruce opens the second door inside the barrel, the secret one, and plunges his hands inside. His face falls, and there is the sound of jelly sucking down a plug hole. Little Ez peeks in, then runs off to be sick.
A little death too much for you? Get out Ez's treasures already. But, father,
says the boy, wiping his mouth.
There's no treasure there, just a load of rotting meat.
Ez's hand hovers, eager to teach, but the mystery draws it away. He examines the barrel, finds nothing but wires and necrotic soup. For a few moments, he is speechless.
But Eze saw the dead tech with his own eyes. He showed us all. It was of the highest quality. So much money to be made.
Little Ez's eyes go worried wide.
Father, are you dying? Dying? If only Eze were dying, then he wouldn't have to feel the dreams of prosperity fading away.
He sighs, seeming to deflate to a man half his size.
Remember, little Ez, this is why you trust nobody. Nobody! Except your good father.
The Seven's sanctum is a cube of silver steel, a mile across, suspended 70 feet above ground. No wires hold it there. No supports are necessary. It turns, achingly slow, never stopping, moved by altered physics. A procession approaches, led by Sapphire. The Vagrant, Vesper, and what seems like half of the city follow. As they get closer, awe slows their steps. One by one they stop, Citizens first, then squires, leaving the others to continue alone. An armoured man awaits. Beneath the splendid helm, he is middle-aged, made thin by a diet of stress and adrenaline. To his right is a woman, equally thin, though for different reasons. Her cloak falls like a set of wings across her shoulders. Beneath it, she is hairless, and the toes that peek from the hem are without nails. Sapphire kneels before them, addressing the woman first. Obeisance. Then the man. Knight Commander. I have it. The vagrant raises an eyebrow. Good, replies the Knight Commander, his sour face struggling to accommodate the good news. We must send it to the Seven immediately. No, says Obeisance. The filth of the world must be washed away first. The Knight Commander lowers his voice. They will already know it is here. Is it wise to keep them waiting? There is a reason why my family has held this honor longer than any other. We never take risks. I defer to your judgment, Obeisance. Sapphire looks worried. Should I take the time to refresh my armor? Her seniors look at each other, half amused. And why, asks the Knight Commander, should you do that? Sir? You don't honestly think that you will go anywhere near the Seven, do you? After years in the blasted lands, you're lucky we let you back into civilization at all. He studies her, dispassionate. Perhaps you could do with cleaning up. I understand you have sent your subordinates for purging. Consider your duties discharged and join them. Yes, sir. Also, a man was retrieved from Slake who has not reported in for testing, nor is he mentioned in your report. I trust you can explain. The report only focuses on the primary objectives of the mission, sir. A full account is pending your pleasure. My pleasure, is it? Well, then you should know that what pleases me more than anything else is detail. I will look forward to reading your full report shortly. In the meantime, kindly produce this... Eyes look up and to the right, accessing secret data. Jaden, and submit him to the proper authorities before he infects anyone. As I understand it, his chances of survival are even less than yours. Sapphire closes her eyes for the briefest moment. Yes, sir. He flicks a finger, dismissing her. Obeisance, I will leave the preparations in your capable hands and meet you here in an hour. She leans down to study Vesper. In turn, she looks up at her bald head, mouth sagging in amazement.
Shiny.
The vagrant bites his lip. Obeisance ignores the comment, turns to study the vagrant. Better make it 2. Chapter 33. Obeisance walks alone up the steps. Once her family was larger, the role shared with brothers and sisters. Duty has thinned them out. One by one, they gave themselves in service to the Winged Eye. Her remaining siblings are too weak now, their minds transcendent, bodies fit only for breeding. She has inspected the next generation carefully, found them wanting. It will be many years before they can stand in her place, and already her body struggles, hollowed by the Seven's love. She has 2 hours to prepare them for Gamma's return. Lips shape into a curse as she rounds the corner. She should have asked for more. They say the sanctum has been silent all these years, that the Seven weep without sound, tears of stone that flow, thickening, deadening. They are wrong. She hears the disharmony. Even now the sounds stir in her mind, thrumming bones, whittling spirit. For too long the inner doors have been closed, sealed with grief. She kneels before them, pressing her head against the smooth outer layer of stone. Panic is pushed away, trapped within clenched fists. Breath is mastered, fear marshalled. The duty will be done.
I am here, she says. Let me take it. Let me taste it. Burden me.
The vagrant leans back in the bath, eyes closed. Cool water vents against his newly dressed thigh. Vesper sits next to him, making waves.
Splash!
Around them, a thin layer of scum and salt collects, making water opaque. A servant creeps around the edge of the bath, gathering clothes. He is careful to hold them at arm's length. Battered boots, a coat aged by dirt and combat, encrusted with old smells. The servant's nose wrinkles in retreat. He turns to go, but something has attached to his sleeve, stopping him. The vagrant makes eye contact, shakes his head.
You actually want these?
The vagrant nods.
Oh.
The clothes are returned, though piled neater than before. Before the servant can stand up again, water slaps him on the ear.
Splash!
He turns to find the vagrant, apologetic, hands up. Mustering calm, he returns to his post by the door. After a minute, his eyes close, his breathing forced into rhythm. The servant sways slightly, but doesn't fall. Another minute, and the door slides open, shushing, slow, just enough to allow a hooded figure entrance. The vagrant sits up hastily. Water rides high. Full of energy, Vesper rides with it.
Splash! Splash! Splash!
A nailless finger raises, demanding calm, then pulls back the hood. The vagrant's face shows surprise for a second time. Then he tries to bow. This is not easy. Between the bath, the injured leg, and Vesper, the gesture is unrecognizable. Vesper waves at the newcomer.
Shiny!
Be at peace,
Obeisant says quickly.
This is not an official visit.
The vagrant does not relax.
I felt we should talk privately. It's important that you know how the last few years have been for the Seven. Whatever happens, the reunion must go smoothly. We cannot afford another lapse.
Obeisance opens her hands as she thinks. They flutter like featherless wings.
For 1,000 years the Seven have watched over us, and for more than half that time my family has served them. We are bred carefully to keep the prominent features of our bloodline, so I look much like my mother and her mother, and so on.
If you were to walk the halls, you'd find a statue dedicated to my office. The young acolytes often think it was made for me. A memory touches her lips, bringing the faintest smile. In fact, it was created in honor of my 11th great-grandmother. You see, the 7 have come to hate change. It pains them in ways we cannot possibly fathom. I believe it is because they have known perfection, seen the empire of the winged eye at its peak. They are the last beings to have basked in the Creator's shadow. For them, each new discovery is a shift away from what should be. Even our greatest achievements are aberrations of a prior glory. She notices the movement of her hands and, on reflex, kills the motion. Since Gamma's fall, the 7 have turned even further inward. Their pain is... Just once, she shudders, beyond comprehension. The vagrant's mouth begins to form a word. Stops. Lips press together. The 7 are beyond us. Nobody can predict how they will respond when you return Gamma's sword. I don't know how much of her remains within it. Let us pray it is enough. She turns and stares directly at the vagrant. You must ensure that it is. You must make this a success. She bows, though whether the deference is directed to man or sword is unclear, then slips away. The vagrant watches her go. His hand rests on the side of the bath. Fingers curl slowly into a trembling fist. Seconds later, the servant's head jerks up, suddenly awake. He blinks twice, blushes, and straightens.
Dada?
The vagrant attends to Vesper.
Dada?
The vagrant nods.
Dada?
Again the vagrant nods. A stream of bubbles appear on the surface of the water. Vesper points at the vagrant.
Dada?
Eyebrows raise, indignant. Vesper laughs and laughs, until at last the vagrant smiles, and joy rings from the walls. The vagrant stands in fresh clothes, awkward. Vesper pulls at hers, unable to remove them. Better, declares obeisance, much to the relief of the staff, though it will not be accompanying us. I had your goat seen to. She will be bred with local stock to improve taint resistance. The goat is brought out. Rarely has she looked so clean or so dangerous.
Goat?
The goat gives her a black look.
Goat?
Repeats Vesper with confidence. Come, it is time. You wish to take the child? The vagrant nods, and they go.
Bye-bye, goat.
They return to the ground beneath the sanctum. Already there, the Knight Commander waits by a staircase, silver wrought. Each step is 30 feet across, 1 foot high. There are 49 in total. The last step leads only to air, the great cube floating high above. Scary, isn't it? Says the Knight Commander. They say that the 7 carry you the last of the way, so you have to put your faith in them. Not everyone makes it. He watches obeisance walk past. She's been doing this since she was about your girl's age,
I've only had to for the last 5 years, but we both agree it never gets easier.
Like pilgrims, they ascend. The vagrant's injuries force him to move slowly. Obeisance is the first to reach the highest step. She does not break stride, toes spreading in the open air to find purchase. Behind her, the two men stop and stare.
"After you," says the Knight Commander.
The vagrant picks Vesper up, rests her on his hip. He draws the sword with his other hand, watching the tiny wings as they unfurl, moved by different currents. He holds the blade out over the edge, feeling the firm tug. The vagrant looks down, looks up again quickly.
"This is as good as it gets. Best to go now."
Little hands cling to the vagrant's arm, pinching skin. A glance back reveals the Knight Commander, still waiting. The vagrant's lips shape a prayer. He takes a deep breath and steps out. Vesper buries her head in the vagrant's chest. The air is not solid, but there is resistance. With spongy strides, the vagrant goes up. He focuses on the cube, muscles tight with tension. One step, then another, fighting the urge to look down. As they get closer, details emerge on the side of the cube. A lip juts below an archway, inviting. The back of Obeisance's cloak already vanishing through it. They follow her in, arriving in a small antechamber. Doors behind them slide closed, sealing the room. Obeisance tries to open the doors opposite, but they are blocked, forcing them to wait. Noises come from beyond, tapping, cracking, the labor of many people. Obeisance counts, face creasing in concern. The sounds get louder, coming from the base of the door. Time ticks by. Vesper yawns. The door crunches open, stopping halfway. Obeisance steps through, beckoning the others. They arrive in a larger chamber, carpeted in stone. People in skin suits and glowing collars work to chip it away by hand. Some are attached to the wall. Some squat down, attending to the floor. As fast as they work, the stone grows back like a weed, stubborn and grey. The Knight Commander pauses at the entrance. "It's getting worse, isn't it?" The seven descend deeper into silence, but we care for them as we have ever done.
"Have you ever seen it this bad before?"
There is no bad when one is tending the seven, Knight Commander. Let us continue. As they step onto the living stone, an eye opens, taking in details. Soon, the sword tremors in the vagrant's hand. By the time they reach the door to the Seven's chamber, the sword is raging. Around it, air shimmers and hums. The stone is thicker here, forming a second barrier to those seeking passage. The vagrant stops and looks at the sword. It looks back, and something like agreement seems to pass between them. He puts Vesper down on the ground, guiding the toddler behind him. Obeisance and the Knight Commander take a step back. The sword swings, singing, and rock falls like rain, breaking into chunks, into powder. Gleaming doors are unveiled. They open for the vagrant as he limps forward, sword held high. Vesper is dragged after, clinging to the back of the vagrant's coat. The Knight Commander raises a foot to follow, and an eye glares at him. Swallowing, he puts it back. Obeisance gets the same treatment. The sword watches them both until the doors close. Pale lights illuminate the Seven's inner chamber. Once bright, the lamps are overgrown, dimmed by a sheet of stone. The room is octagonal. One side for the supplicant, unadorned. 6 others each house a figure, statue-like, covered from head to toe in a thick layer of rock. All appear human-shaped, with discernible wings, their postures neutral, dead. The 7th alcove lies empty. The vagrant holds the sword up, letting it hum, calling, calling. As if returning from a dream, the 7 respond, slowly, sonorously, splitting the shells that cover them, yawning into life. One by one, they catch the call and return it, till the harmony swells, reverberating from the walls and leaping up, vanishing into the fathomless, ceilingless dark above. Beautiful sounds mature, becoming words, musical, passed from one to the other, filling the chamber and the vagrant's ears. Morning has become morning, and we rejoice. We rejoice in the proximity of your flame once more. Once more we are 7, are 7 together. Come, come and join with us. Join with us your light, diminished but still bright. 6 arms drift out, gesturing to the last alcove, inviting. Neither vagrant nor sword move. An eye studies the chamber, pausing at each alcove, noting the blades housed there, buried beneath layers of stone, useless. Rage simmers between sword and vagrant. He takes a lock of hair from an inner pocket, throws it down on the floor between them. The sword lowers to point at it, then sweeps across the figures, then makes a hard stab towards the doors. 6 faces freeze as the joyous echoes of song die out. The vagrant swallows in a throat suddenly dry. Vesper dares a quick peek from behind the vagrant's coat. Alpha of the 7 sings out. The note begins wondrous but imperfect. The others soon match him. We see now your pain, most furious you are, and desperate to fight once more your desire. Your desire we grant, go forth, take a second flame to our enemies. Voices come together, their force rocking the vagrant backwards until he is pinned to the wall. Vesper holds his hand tightly, little feet rising from the floor. Do not stop. Stop when the cancer is cut from the bones and flesh of the land is clean. The vagrant closes his eyes, squeezes them tight. He braces himself against the sound, pulling Vesper behind him, raising the sword in front. Silvered wings unfurl protectively, shielding his face. An eye widens, blazing with indignation.
Then, and only then will you be free to return to us. Return to us and rejoice, rejoice for true, complete again, immaculate. 6 go quiet, demands echoing after. Vesper's feet touch floor again, and she wraps herself around a comforting leg. In the vagrant's hand, the sword trembles, humming dangerously. He takes a deep breath. From the depths of his stomach, something is forged, travelling inevitably, gaining force as it goes, following tubes behind ribs, up through the chest, into the throat, teeth parting, allowing it outside. The vagrant opens his eyes. They are full of weariness, disgust, conviction. No! The Knight Commander and obeisance wait before the doors, indecisive. Of the two, she is the more composed, having endured the Seven's silence for many years. Before it was empty, a void which threatened to swallow her, bone and soul. Now it is full of potential, deafening, the inhalation before the storm. Such subtleties are lost on the Knight Commander. Dimly he perceives a deep and fathomless terror. Nothing more. Regardless, the two wait, held in place by strong will and stronger training. That sound, that was them, wasn't it? They've returned. Obeisance does not take her eyes from the doors. They never left us.
Of course, I did not mean... But that was them, and they sounded joyous. That was a good sign, was it not?
Did you feel joyous when you heard them? The passing of those feelings have left tracks in his spirit, easy to find and recall.
Yes.
He does not add that he felt more than simple joy, does not dare. And how do you feel now? He tails off. Precisely, she adds. There is a wrinkle in her cape, irritating. She does not touch it, does not move. Her stillness serves to underscore each creak of his armour, each nervous breath. The doors swing open, and they both bow, deferent. The vagrant strides out, sword in one hand, Vesper wrapped around the other. He passes them by without pause. The Knight Commander risks a glance, eyes widen in surprise, and words blurt.
Wait! Where are you going? What's going to happen to us?
His question bounces off the vagrant's back, unnoticed. Anger comes, pushing past confusion. The Knight Commander goes in pursuit. Before he can catch up, obeisance rushes between them, forming an obstacle stronger than steel, a wall built of oaths and honour. He cannot move her, cannot even touch her, for she is an instrument of the Seven, not above him so much as beyond him. It does not stop his anger, however.
Let me pass! He denied the Seven! He is taking the sword we have waited so long for!
She shakes her head. The denial was not his alone.
Anger drains, replaced by dread. But what does this mean?
It means I must go inside. Maintain order until I return. Allow none to pass.
He nods, glad to hide behind duty. Obeisance seems to glide through the doors. They close, leaving the man alone. He ponders what to do as the seconds pass into minutes. Then there is a change in the air. The doors begin to shake, slowly at first, then faster, building, humming. On instinct, the Knight Commander starts to run. Tremors pass through the inner sanctum as 6 voices rise together, passing through stone and silver, through men and women, land and sky. Keening. With a last pull, the commander's boot sucks free of the marsh. Samael helps steady him as he moves onto solid ground. They continue the remainder of the journey more directly, a welcome contrast to what has been. Maimed and weakening, the commander has been forced to hide along the way, like a thief. Necessity is well understood, but a sour taste remains. Nobody stops their approach to the fallen palace, but things watch, ready to pounce if the commander falls. Several times he staggers on the sloping floors, thoughts drifting along with his essence. But he does not fall. Iron will drives him forward. He neither knows nor cares any more about its origins. When it wavers, Samael is ready at his side, obedient to the last. They walk alone through broken streets and under a shadow of buildings, lurching, until at last they reach a tower, hints of brass hidden behind lichen. Samael assists him up winding steps, through corridors well walked. The man-shape sees them approach and opens the door. Inside, the usurper lurks, its body a mass of repairs. It is hard to reconcile the ailing thing before him with the great monarch whose name inspires fear in human and infernal alike. Shrugging off any further help, the commander walks the final steps towards his old master. At every moment he expects to be exposed, for the usurper to see him for what he is and attack, but it barely seems to notice him. As the end of his journey draws close, he stumbles, legs finally giving way to gravity. Sensing something at last, the usurper looks up, opening its arms to receive the commander as he falls. The battered shell is drawn close, and the usurper licks the rim of the commander's visor, drawing back essence spent long ago. The commander is absorbed whole. Experiences, wants, desires, failures, regrets, and something else. A single note, a call to action, a message of malice sent by Gamma's sword passed through the commander and into the usurper. As the sound reverberates inside it, dark lines manifest in the usurper's essence, scars from its battle with Gamma, still fresh. The great infernal feels a flash of terrible pain as old injuries stir from their slumber. It tries to hold itself together, to fight as it has always done, but it is tired, weak, and the scars deepen, open, living wounds that rend the usurper from within, tearing essence in all directions, singing their song of death. The usurper's destruction sends ripples through the ether. Invisible, silent, they are nevertheless felt far and wide. At the fallen palace, infernals pause in their business, slapped with sudden freedom. Thoughts turn to the empty throne, and who among them might fill it. Monsters circle one another, wary, while the lesser infernals cluster, gambling on new masters to take them through the coming chaos. Further north, in New Horizon, the demagogue's relief is palpable. It holds a celebration, grotesque, and begins to plan. Elsewhere, packs of infernals drift apart. No longer driven by the usurper's order, they wander, mindless, allowing petty hungers to lead them. Attacks on human settlements become increasingly random, increasingly petty. Few of the victims appreciate the difference. And yet, for many of the invaders, there is a kind of sadness, for the usurper gave them purpose. It was the green sun around which they orbited. Where once an iron will defined them, now there is emptiness and uncertainty. The vagrant steps out of the Seven's sanctum and into empty space. He doesn't hesitate. Gliding down towards the steps, sword out, Vesper held tight. The sword's silvered wings spread wide, catching invisible currents. He lands, takes the stairs at a more stately pace. Down he goes, leaving the sanctum and the Seven behind. Tension falls away like an old skin. Shoulders relax, straighten. He lifts his gaze from the floor, looks around as he returns to the shining city. An eye does the same, mirroring exactly. They see children in groups, chip-linked, so similar in expression, in presentation, it takes effort to tell them apart. They see structures carefully maintained from a bygone age, statues of the Seven and the great shining pillars that give the city its name. They see the last of the knights in their ancestral armor, treasured, polished. Nothing new. Nothing but carefully controlled decay covered in beautiful greenery, a civilization lost and stagnant. An eye closes, unwilling to see any more. The vagrant walks on, past soldiers and citizens, young and old. He does not fit into their hierarchies. There is no codex to apply to him, no social codes that work. He is a man without rank, and yet he walks in the Seven's grace, untouchable. Most kneel as he passes. All watch. None get in the way. Vesper waves cheerily at the crowds. When she does not get a response, she waves all the harder, trying to smile them into submission. One of the knights returns the wave formally. Devoid of emotion, the gesture is hollow, eerie. They pass windows in the hillside, the only sign of buildings hidden underground, and the maze of tunnels that connect them. Faces press against the glass, their expressions blank. The vagrant keeps walking. Little legs soon tire, and Vesper is lifted onto familiar shoulders. She enjoys the view, pointing at plants, at clouds, calling out names with delight. Dutifully, the vagrant nods, giving her ankle an encouraging squeeze each time she manages a new word. The purging facility is not covered with a carpet of grass. It stands solid, metal walls dull, catching rather than reflecting the light. It is shaped like an egg, 20 feet high and 10 across, and every inch is covered in etchings, a blend of language and artistry. Words become wings, and swords, and hands that hold them, drawing the eye to its only entrance. All unfortunates that end up here go through this door. Those that survive leave via the tunnel on the opposite side. Next to the facility is a second building, only partially above ground. Simpler in design, but larger, where bodies recover from their ordeal or undergo preparation for burial. The vagrant approaches the second building. A man stands outside, his uniform crisp. He holds up a hand. "Who are you?" Vesper waves at him.
Esper.
The man is not amused. "I've not been informed of any inspection. Who are you? Where is your authority?" The vagrant raises an eyebrow, raises the sword. The man looks at it, double takes. Forgive me. I had no idea. He opens the door. As Vesper trots past, she looks at the man, then points at the vagrant with extreme satisfaction.
Dada.
The inside of the building is divided into cells, all locked. Rooms of healing, of holding, where those that survive the purging await official approval of their purity and permission to return to society. The doors are transparent, and the vagrant looks into each room as he passes. Sapphire sits hunched in one cell, her eyes dark, her body wasted. Jaden's body is next door, an unrecognizable husk awaiting disposal. Nurses attend to the living and the dead with equal care. In another cell, he sees one of the sisters from Slake, weak but alive, and yet another, the boy Chalk, heavily sedated and fighting a fever. He makes eye contact with those he knows, nodding encouragement, concern creeping into his face each time he comes across an empty room. At last he finds what he is looking for, and opens the door. Vesper goes in first, frowning at the cell's occupant, a man with bandages wrapping the top half of his face. The man's voice cracks as he answers.
Vesper? Is that you?
Amberlam.
The vagrant races Vesper across the room, and all three embrace, wrapping each other in a circle of arms, foreheads touching. Safe. A dark shape moves under the water, running on silent engines. It moves slowly, navigating its way past energy nets and dormant sentinel drones, treating the drifting husks with caution, lest contact wake them again. It surfaces at the coast, allowing a single passenger to disembark. The first has not been this far north before. The presence of infernal feet on the northern continent is historic. It is pleased how easy it is, and wary. For it feels the seven even from this distance. Their grief shakes the sky, disturbing the essence currents for miles around. Ever patient, the first observes the lights above that so few can see, prepared to run if things develop. But soon the signs are clear. This storm will pass, and the seven will quieten, returning to their self-imposed exile. It tries to sense the malice, but cannot perceive anything within the strange walls of the city. For now, the north is too dangerous for the first to interfere. Better to consolidate its hold on the seas and the Empire's many colonies. The underwater vessel turns around, returning south, leaving a fragment of the first behind. to watch, to wait. On top of a hill sits a house, half built. Vesper lies in the grass nearby, plucking with both hands and throwing their contents into the air. Wind catches the loose blades, swirling them in spirals of green. The goat does not approve of such waste. A small army of kids work voraciously by her feet, keeping the hill neat. Male goats wait at the hill's base, knowing better than to venture up uninvited. By an unfinished wall, two men sit. They talk quietly, kindly. One is scarred, the other blind. Both appear happy. At their side a sword sleeps, peaceful. That was The Vagrant by Peter Newman, read by Jot Davis. This program was produced by ID Audio for Harper Audio. Text copyright Peter Newman, 2015. Production copyright 2015 by HarperCollins Publishers. All rights reserved. Peter Newman asserts the moral right to be identified as the author of this work.